Hello and welcome. Today we are delving into the legend of lore of dragons of Middle-earth. Get a cup of tea, settle in. Well, it's a rainy day here at the sanctuary, so I decided it'd be a good day to come into the study and do a bit of reading. The dragons are outside playing in the mud puddles. Now keep in mind, for a dragon, a mud puddle is like a small pond to us, but they're having a marvelous time. And so am I here in the study, reading all the wonderful stories by Professor Tolkien. Now, J.R.R. Tolkien is one of my favorite authors. And here at the Dragon Preservation Society, we not only go out observing dragons, but we also study lore of dragon. And one of those sources of lore, of course, is literature. And this particular series of stories is one of my favorite. I have read The Silmarillion, I've read The Hobbit, and of course the Trilogy of the Rings, the untold stories, the unfinished stories, really anything that I can get my hands on by the professor, I am always anxious to read. Right now I'm reading this book by David Day called A Tolkien Bestiary. And it's all about the wonderful creatures of Middle-earth. And it's a wonderful book. I highly recommend it to you if you're able to get a copy of it. And of course, there's a section on dragons. Let's take a look here. The illustrations are fantastic. The stories, of course, are amazing. So, highly recommend it, as I said. Now, in the various legends of Middle-earth, there are a number of dragons as told by Professor Tolkien. Besides the word dragon, he also referred to them as drakes and worms, these terms being derived from Latin and Old English respectively. The most commonly thought of course, is Smaug, the very dragon that stole Erebor from the Dwarfs in The Hobbit. Now you might be surprised to know that Smaug here is not the largest nor the strongest of the dragons of Middle-earth. As a matter of fact, he's a bit of one of the smaller ones. So let us take a look at each of these furnaces with wings, as Beaufort once said, and see what fascinating creatures we might find. Now the first dragon we're going to look at is Glaurung, the father of dragons. Glaurung appears in the Silmarillion and is the first of the fire drakes of Angband. In the story The Children of Húrin, Glaurung has a great power of persuasion and is able to influence the minds of elves and men. For example, the hero Turin has a sister by the name of Gleonor. Glaurung is able to erase all memory of her family from Gleonor's mind. Gleonor is a fire drake in all aspects, with the exception of not possessing wings. Glaurung was the sire of a host of lesser dragons, fire drakes and cold drakes. These latter dragons do not breathe flames. Now, fire drakes, as we were talking about, were utilized by Morgoth in the fall of Gondolin. This was one of the fairest cities of the elves. It was told that great Balrogs, demons of flame, rode the fire drakes and drove them to destroy the fair city. The cold drakes, as we mentioned before, did not breathe fire. Many of these perished in the wars of the First Age, though some did survive. In fact, there were enough of them that survived that they became a serious threat to the dwarves of the Third Age. Ancalagon the Black. In the Sindarin language, this means rushing jaws. And Ancalagon was the largest dragon in Middle-earth, absolutely enormous. Morgoth bred this dragon in the First Age of Middle-earth. He, as I said, is the largest and mightiest of the fire drakes, as well as being the first of the winged dragons. Ancalagon was more than just a big and powerful dragon. He was captain of dragons, and he led fleets of fire drakes in battles against Morgoth's enemies. Now we come to Scatha. Scatha is known as a long worm. This is a type of dragon that is elongated and sinuous. Little lore is known of this dragon. Like Glaurung, Scatha is also a wingless dragon. Now Scatha made war upon the dwarves of the Grey Mountains and drove them from their homes. Fram of the Eotheod fought and slew Scatha. There was a dispute between Fram and the dwarves over Scatha's treasure hoard. It is also said in the story that Meriadoc Brandybuck of the Shire came into possession of a silver horn that was part of this treasure. Smaug, chiefest and greatest of calamities. We now found ourselves returning to Smaug, the bane of Thorin Oakenshield, and the cause of the destruction of Lake Town. Smaug is the standard from which all red fire-breathing dragons in literature are measured from. Content on his piles of gold and jealous of every single precious coin, every inch the arrogant worm, confident in his power and in his strength. Smaug, as we said, is a fire drake and has great wings with which to fly over his victims. However, like many dragons, he has a weakness. A single scale which fell to the arrow of Girion, Lord of Dale. Girion's descendant, Bard the bowman, would take advantage of this foible and, with his own arrow, slay this great worm, casting his ruin into the lake. Now you may have taken note that many of these dragons had bitter hostility towards dwarves. This was for two reasons. First and foremost was the great desire dragons have for golden gems. The dwarves, being miners and craftsmen of beautiful and valuable items, collected these treasures over many, many years. The dragons naturally wished to possess these hoards and make them their own. The second was the dragons' fear of the dwarves of the Blue Mountains. These dwarves were such skilled weaponsmiths that they could craft swords, axes, and spears that could penetrate the scales of a dragon. At the Battle of Unnumbered Tears, a host of dwarves, men, and elves joined together to fight the forces of evil and the dragons that came there with them. The battle went ill for the host and would have been a complete catastrophe if not for the valor of the Blue Mountain dwarves. Their dragon-slaying weapons made possible for the remaining host to reach safety. Another notable creature in Tolkien lore are the Fel Beasts. These steeds of the Nazgul are large, winged creatures that create great fear and whose bodies give off a terrible stench. There is some question as to if these creatures are really dragons at all. One reason being is that they do not breathe flame. However, they do emit a horrible scream that renders their prey frozen with fear. Of course, as we all well know, not all dragons breathe fire. Well, I hope you have enjoyed going through the lore of Professor Tolkien's wonderful creatures, the amazing variety of dragons that he created in his stories. I would hope that you will share with us some of your favorite literary dragons. So please like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment if you would be so kind. Until then, happy observing.